Good morning and welcome to this office hours session. My name is Jesper Scherpenhuizen and today I'll be your guide on our journey to how to create a smarter mailroom by applying AI. Well, before we start, just a couple of comments here and there. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box below and we'll answer all your questions, or at least we'll do our best at the end of the session. I would say enjoy the ride. So, for those of you who don't know Kofax yet, we're of course a globally operating software house servicing over 25,000 customers globally. We do that direct, but also through our tremendous channel of trusted partners. And you can find us in all industries. And what we actually do, I'm going to talk about that a bit later on. But before we do that, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What's the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about mailrooms? Well, I know exactly what I see is I see tremendous stacks of paper and all the trouble that comes with that. And the problems are, of course, well, it's just a sheer volume. There's just too much there. And the costs that bring with it are so extremely high, especially compared to the more electronic direct transactions that we can do nowadays, but also compared to electronic mail coming into an organization. And this, of course, will bring a lot of risk. So on the one hand, you can have compliancy risks, but you can also have judicial risks there too. So how do we then minimize that will be of the utmost importance. Then again, we have exceptions. If you just think about how you handle documents, how you handle physical paper, and how you then need to route them throughout an organization, but in this case, you need to do it slightly different, there are too many exceptions. And especially if you then think about if something is just not right and a-okay, if it's not in good order, how that then works. And paper is just slow. So improving speeds is of course one of the key focus points, and especially in today's day and age, where we expect as customers, as stakeholders, we expect organizations to be able to transact and act at the speed of light. So then the question becomes, does this look familiar to you? Is you have physical post coming into an organization, and then of course you do what you always do: you prep, you sort, and you batch, and you put it in your scanner for further downstream processing. And if you still have faxes or other communication coming into your mailroom, you first print it and then you put it on the scanner. That is of course something that is costing a lot of money. It's an extremely slow process, and if you think that just physical post offers risk, well, just think about what this can do to your organization. And if we then think about what sort of communication is coming into a mailroom, this is just a small sample of all the documents that a generic company will receive, independently of what your industry is. You will have these, and much more if we dive even deeper. So it's so many forms, shapes, and sizes. This is going to complicate things that much. And if we then think about the reality that we live in today, we're working from home, we are spread across the globe, we can have people in APAC, in Kuala Lumpur, getting documents that need to be processed in the Americas, and we might have people in San Diego who are making decisions on a process that's happening in the Middle East, you name it. And if you then throw in the challenge of everyone working from home, you will need to have a centrally managed digital mailroom that can handle all of those incoming pieces of communication, but also be able to react to them and communicate back there as well. So talking about the current situation, I've taken the liberty of including this HFS research finding from April this year, and this is actually showing where key decision makers within organizations just like yours, how they see where they need to invest to really keep on going in the current situation. And you see that, and I've highlighted these here, that process automation and artificial intelligence are amongst the highest ranking ones. And this is, of course, these are the capabilities that make up your digital mailroom solution that you want to have. And if you then see how we as Kofax are helping organizations, automate the challenges that they have because of COVID. Well, here you have Rabobank that are using our robots to automate a lot of the things that they need to change in order to address the things that are happening to their customers, but also how you can see local municipalities and local governments, how they are doing their utmost to help their constituents, but also entrepreneurs. So here we have the Dutch municipality of Ede that's leveraging digital mailroom capabilities to make sure that they give out a sort of welfare to entrepreneurs nowadays. And again, powered by mailroom capabilities. So let's take one step back, and if we start to think about what would we actually need to make this better, how do we make sure that we offer a linking pin between core systems within an organization and the channels with which stakeholders want to communicate with them, whether it's inbound or outbound? Then we will need something as a digital mailroom capability, and that's what we want to do as Kofax. And that digital mailroom then, of course, needs to be able to do several things. It needs to be able to capture all incoming communication, independent of what the channel should be. We then need to be able to classify that incoming content or communication and make sure, okay, well, this needs to go there, 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 and there. We need to separate documents, extract the relevant data, bring the human back into the loop by offering the human for validation to make sure that the system is doing the right job. But we also need to have a communication capability within the digital mailroom to reach out to those stakeholders, informing them straight away, hey, we are missing something, or you need to resubmit this because the quality wasn't good enough, instead of waiting for a business user 5 days later that's going to come back and says, well, hey, we still need your income statement. That's going to impact the speed with which you can help your customers. And then at the end, we need to be able to deliver data, the relevant data points that we've extracted from these documents or incoming emails, whatever you have it. We need to deliver the actual documents to an ECM. But we might also deliver additional information, because these documents that are coming in could be the start of an onboarding process. Once that happens, the digital mailroom can go out and find additional information that will speed up further downstream processing. So once we've taken that look at what you will need, let's see how we as Kofax want to help you. Our promise to you is we want to enable you to work like tomorrow, today. And that means that we want to give you the capabilities to transform your information-intensive business processes from start to finish. And what we see is that in order to do that, you'll need to have an intelligent automation platform which is meant for digital workflow transformation. And in order to be able to get to that point, you will need to have document intelligence, connected systems, and process orchestration capabilities within that platform. So from a document intelligence perspective, which is then, of course, a combination of cognitive capture and artificial intelligence, you will need to have capabilities like NLP, natural language processing, because we see a lot more unstructured content coming into organizations nowadays than previously. So we will need to do things like, entity extraction, sentiment analysis, much more. I'm going to talk about that later on. Machine learning is, of course, very important, because we don't want to have people coding specific rules for extraction or classification. We want to teach the system how it works and that it is able to learn. We need to be able to leverage visual intelligence, and not just within capture, but also within other parts of the platform. Think about things like computer vision. And again, nowadays, for a lot of us workers at home, the best scanner that we have is our mobile device. So we need to extend digital mailroom capabilities to that handheld device and make sure that we can use that to ingest documents. And we also need to be able to transact remotely by using those machines as well. And if we then think about connected systems, we all need to be aware that a mailroom solution never stands alone. It's always part of an infrastructure or a landscape within an organization where you need to be able to integrate with ERP systems, CRM systems, maybe even DMS systems, and of course cloud initiatives. And those cloud initiatives are of course part of an overall ecosystem that we see that's happening, where organizations might want to leverage capabilities like, for instance, Dropbox for communication with their constituents or customers. And, well, maybe good to point out the Kofax Smart Hub here, where we offer a lot of connectors that you can already use, so you don't even need to reinvent the wheel. So smarthub.kofax.com, please have a look. And then, of course, also if we think about connected systems, we need to be able to, well, as I said, capture information from any channel there is. So we are now at a point where it's not just physical paper, it's not just email, it's also social media, it's WhatsApp coming into organizations, it's news feeds that we want to monitor on a multi-channel way. But then again, I also said the digital mailroom also needs to be able to communicate back to people. So instead of just communicating through post or email, we need to meet your stakeholders where they want to be met. If people want to communicate through WhatsApp, they need to be able to do that. If they want to communicate through email, they should be able to do that. If they have a mobile device and they have an app for that, we need to meet them where they want to be met. And instead of thinking about, well, sending and receiving, we need to start thinking about conversations. So how we can really truly achieve duplex customer engagement there as well. And we've been talking about this digital mailroom process, but if you then think about what kind of process that typically is, you will need to have process orchestration on top of that. And I'm going to tell you a bit about how we then see the digital workforce and how we then want to combine that with the human talent that you have within your organization. So a digital mailroom process is going to consist of several steps, and one of those steps could be, well, hey, we have a request for a new account coming into our digital mailroom via an email or maybe a web form that was filled out. Well, that can then trigger an RPA robot that does background checks, credit checks, customer due diligence, even before it's been handed over to the onboarding business units, because we want to make sure that we want to add as much value as we can within the mailroom. And of course, when you have robots in place, when you have machine learning in place, when you have artificial intelligence in place, you will never need to forget about the human talent, because those humans in the loop are of the utmost importance. On the one hand, of course, to make sure that the system gets better over time, but also to make sure that we always have people that can, well, really truly make a difference and are truly free to add value to these processes. And you need to have insights as well. So you need to you need to be able to monitor your system, you need to be able to monitor your process, and much, much more. So we have then combined all of these capabilities within the Kofax Intelligent Automation platform. And if you then see what the actual benefits are that then brings to the table, we are, of course, all about driving innovation for you as an organization. We want to unlock any sort of value that might be hidden away currently. And the thing then is we are all about efficiency, and we want to accelerate also that productivity that you then have. And we want to make sure that you're able to work like tomorrow today. So that means that you're able to automate your processes, whether it's digital mailroom or anything else, but you are then also able to scale up tomorrow if needed. If we then have that platform in place, so how do all of these capabilities then work together within the digital mailroom? On the one hand, you have cognitive capture. So why is that so important? Because 80% of all data within an organization is hidden away in unstructured data. And that is, of course, on the one hand true for all communication coming into your organization, but also all the data at rest, every document that's hidden away within your DMS. And if you then take into account that, and these are Gartner's numbers, not ours, that all of your automation initiatives will leverage additional capabilities, and most importantly, the data that's hidden away within unstructured data. Yeah, that's the reason why you need cognitive capture. And then if you think about OCR, and typically people say, well, cognitive capture is just OCR. No, that's not true, because OCR itself is not enough. And I typically say, I use my kids as an example here. My 6-year-old, he can read, he can understand what's written, he can understand what's important. And my 3-year-old, he can do OCR. He can tell you exactly, well, that's an A, that's a B, that's a C, but he can't read yet. So that's the difference between OCR and cognitive capture. And if you then bring, as I said, robotic process automation to the mix there as well, so how you actually are able to get all of the repetitive tasks that your human workforce now has to do painstakingly by hand, if you then remove that need and give that to a robot, you will then free up your human talent to truly add value to these processes, and that will improve the way you engage with your customers, with your stakeholders, with your constituents, with your patients. As said, the digital mailroom is not just about ingestion, it's also about communication, and you need to be able to communicate with those stakeholders once they reach out to you, but also proactively through their channel of choice. And those could be internal or external, but you need to be able to communicate through that channel of choice, but also in the tone of voice that they need. And again, we need to be able to go beyond the confines of your organization. We need to be able to bring people into that process as well. If you have a customer that's being onboarded, even though that customer doesn't have access to any of your systems, but we do need to have a way for them to be part of your process. So that's why you will probably need to have mobile capabilities to bring them into that process there too. And at the same time, making sure that you are adhering to all compliance rules and regulations in order to prevent fraud, whether it's ID fraud or check fraud, whatever fraud you might want to have. So you need to have those capabilities within your digital mailroom as well. One of the things that are become more and more visible in today's day and age is you need to have the capability to transact remotely. As I said, you might need to have your mobile device as the most powerful scanner that you have, but you also need to be able to leverage capabilities like e-signing to actually do business remotely. So that would then again also become a piece of functionality of paramount importance within your digital mailroom. How do you make sure that someone outside of the organization is able to sign off on a deal, on a contract, on a affidavit, you name it? And, well, typically I present a lot in English, but there's always one thing I throw in from the Dutch language, and that is meten is weten, which means as much as you can only truly know that which you measure. So we will need to have dashboards and cockpits where you can have a look and immediately see how well your digital mailroom is operating. How efficient is cognitive capture? How good are we at classification? How effective are my robots? Or maybe even how good are we at communicating to our customers? So that's one thing, operational insights. But you will also need to have process insight, because digital mailroom and the processes that they are a part of go beyond, well, the simple confines of the digital mailroom solution. Because it could be that an incoming email triggers a process that leads to a new customer being onboarded. And you need to have dashboards and cockpits that provide insight into that end-to-end process. Because again, that's our promise. Our promise is that you should be able to digitally transform processes from start to finish. But that starts with having the right insights into those processes. And then, last but not least, within analytics and meten is weten, is you will need to have process discovery. And the reason for that is you might have black holes within your organization, sinks of time and effort that would be great for automating with perhaps robotic process automation, or maybe even an addition to your digital workforce within the digital mailroom. And you need to have a tool to make sure that you can measure that as well. And on top of that, we've been talking about this digital or hybrid workforce that consists of AI, cognitive capture, robots, and much, much more. And you need to be able to marry that to your human talent. So how do you then make sure that a robot can hand over a task to a human? And how do you make sure that your human workforce is able to hand over work to robots? And how can they work together in an end-to-end process? You will need to have an orchestration layer on top of that. And again, that's also something that's part of your digital mailroom solution, which is part of Kofax Intelligent Automation. Then again, we as Kofax, we are of course not the only ones that have recognized this need for digital mailroom capabilities. But what we can say is that we as Kofax are the undisputed global market leader in this regard. And the analysts, well, they have to agree. For instance, in this report that we received from Everest a couple of months back, again, undisputed there whatsoever. In conclusion, let's talk about what sort of functions you will need within your mailroom. Is you will need to have the capability to acquire information from any system, from any channel, from any source you might have. You need to be able to understand what's actually hidden away within those documents, emails, WhatsApp, and you will then need to be able to integrate that in the overall process. And you might need to refer back to that stakeholder and saying, well, we need additional information before we can actually process it. But you will need to be able to deliver that further downstream. And if we then do a bit more of a deeper dive into the actual capabilities, we were talking about the actual pipeline that you have. One of the first steps that you have is you need to be able to classify what we're looking at. And then if we take a quick step back, a couple of years ago, you would say, well, most of the information that's coming into an organization will be structured. So if you squint your eyes, you can already recognize, oh, well, that's an application form, or that's well, in this case, a payments form. It is highly structured. You will always know where the information is hidden away. Fairly easy to classify, but also to extract information from. What you then see is you do see a shift away from structured content more towards semi-structured and of course fully unstructured. So semi-structured, you can think about things where parts of the data will be at the same location, or you can be able to figure it out fairly quickly, and you can already see, well, this is an invoice, this is an order, but there will be things like repetitive data to it, and the length might not be consistent, but that's again something fairly easy to classify. And if you then look at fully unstructured content, and then we think about things like emails, but also standard correspondence, things that are grabbed from the internet, highly unstructured. There is typically just a lot of natural language in there, and we then need to be able to classify that. So as you can see, based on what we can see, the image, it's fairly easy to classify structured content. And you might already be able to do semi-structured classification based on the layout, but within the unstructured world, you will need to really look into the content if you want to be able to classify what we're looking at. And that's exactly where we as Kofax really also shine. So we can do image classification, and we can do content classification, and we can do a mix of that. But for the content classification, what we do is we use an adaptive feature classifier that goes beyond things like bag of words or do the exact counting of the characters. No, we look one step deeper, and we truly apply phonosemantic classification by looking at these phononyms that you see right here. And this is, of course, what brings us that tremendous edge when it comes to unstructured classification, and which is, of course, becoming more and more important going forward. Once you've classified the document that you're looking at, you need to figure out what the actual data is that you were interested in. We have a broad spectrum of capabilities for data extraction from content, but I do want to spend a bit more time on NLP, natural language processing, because we've been talking about machine learning for classification, but also for extraction, and we've been talking about other parts of AI. But if we truly want to unlock the capabilities of your digital mailroom by leveraging AI, we also need to, address NLP. And NLP has been part of the Kofax Intelligent Automation platform for quite some time now. And with our latest release, we've added even more functionality. So let's have a quick introduction to that. The two capabilities with NLP that we originally released were named entity extraction and sentiment analysis. Entity extraction, What it actually means is it is able to recognize all of the actors within a text, give you them, and also make sure that you know what sort of an actor it is. So it could be, give me all of the people in this piece of text, give me all their names, give me all of the roles that they have, and make sure that we have those, all the locations, all dates, all quotes, and as in this case, all amounts that we've found. And this is of course very interesting if you say, well, I have a piece of text here that talks about shareholders, and I want to have a list of all those shareholders. You just then apply named entity extraction, you look for all organizations and all people, and you have a full list of shareholders. The other thing is, of course, sentiment analysis. So if you have a piece of text and you want to know how positive or negative is this piece of text, it could be from -1 to +1, -1 very negative, +1 very positive, and 0 being neutral. This is, of course, very helpful if you want to apply this to incoming correspondence you get. But one of the nice things is if you actually combine these two, so entity extraction and sentiment analysis. So even though you might have a very positive piece of text, but the entity you're interested in, for instance, John, he's been talked about very negatively. So even though it's a positive piece of text, John, the entity, has been mentioned very negatively. So that is, of course, something that you can then apply in things like bad press research and other, information intensive analyses that you want to do. So I'm going to show both of these in a demo in a few minutes. But before we do that, I want to introduce you quickly to the new capabilities that we've been introducing to the Kofax Intelligent Automation platform. And the first is theme extraction. So just like we had entity extraction, which are going to show you all of the entities that we have in the text, themes are going to do the exact same thing, but then for things like topics, themes, ideas, you name it. And this is of course very interesting if you then want to do analysis after the fact. So if you want to see, we have all of these complaint letters that have been classified, but we then want to do further analysis and say, how many of these complaint letters were about broken packaging? You then don't want to start looking for broken packaging as a word because people tend to describe these things differently. But you do want to have an easy way to collect all of that data that talks about broken packaging, for instance. And this will also help you with even a more fine-grained classification going forward. So this will actually start helping building a hierarchical model within your digital mailroom there as well. And the other great capability that we now have is summarization. If you have a big piece of text and you just want to know, what's the executive summary of that? That's where you can use the summarization capability that we now have within our platform. So you can then say, from all of these documents coming in, just get me a 1-line summary or 2 or 3-line summary, and you can then use that for analysts that need to review these documents, or if you're reviewing a lot of documents, you can easily, within one glimpse, see exactly what this document is about. So again, very powerful stuff. Up until now, we've of course been talking about the pre-trained NLP models within the Kofax Intelligent Automation platform. And yes, of course, you can add entities to the corpora yourself, so you can extend upon that pre-trained model. But we also have a trainable NLP capability, namely the text content locator, that you can train. Again, an application of machine learning for extraction from unstructured content, from natural language. And it's not limited to things that are on single lines. It can go over one line. It's not limited to numbers or names or anything else. You can train this if you have enough samples. And been within the product for quite some time, but it is a great example of what you can do if you apply NLP going forward. Without further ado, I want to just quickly jump into a demo. Let's have a look at a practical example of NLP. One of the best known examples is customer service. So here we are looking at an inbox for a customer services department. And what you already see is that the Digital Mailroom has extracted a lot of information from these emails already. So we have done sentiment analysis, entity extraction, and we've used all of that to determine what the urgency is with which these emails need to be, handled, so to say. So you can see that this one, the negative one, has urgency 1. So that's the one that we first need to handle. So we can go into that. And what it's going to show me in one immediate glimpse is that this is a negative email. So the overall sentiment is minus 0.23. It's coming from @Whitmancini, and he views himself quite positively. But on the other hand, the officer, John Smith, quite negatively, and Bankwright as an organization, very negative there as well. So we now know that we will probably need to handle this as soon as possible in order to turn this around. If we then have a look at the positive email that we received from Laura, you'll see it's the exact other way around. So here we see Laura very happy. The overall sentiment of the email itself was 0.52. Quite positive, and you see that she has nothing but praise for Bankwright as a company, but also the loan officer, Janet Morgan. So just to show you how you can use NLP in a very practical matter when you power your digital mailroom with those capabilities. So we've seen what NLP can do, but as said, NLP is just one of the many parts that make up cognitive capture. So I want to just quickly show you what the pipeline typically looks like if you want to do data extraction. It typically starts with documents come in, and some of these documents will need to be OCR'd. So whether it's a piece of physical text coming in or if it's a scan, and Kofax Intelligent Automation, of course, is able to leverage several OCR engines, including our own OmniPage engine. And once we have those OCR results, one or maybe more, we can then apply a collection of extraction methods. And those can be indeed cognitive locators, like for instance NLP, or a trainable group locator, or a text content locator, but also more declarative locators there as well, and you can combine them. And these locators would then have either one result or maybe even a list of alternatives, and you can then combine all of them with evaluators, and those evaluators can again be cognitive or declarative, but in the end you will have a single field result. So you're able to, use this breadth of capabilities without writing a line of code. So this is all configuration. And that's, of course, something that we truly pride ourselves in. So if we then look at all of the other AI capabilities within the platform, and I can talk for days about just this slide. I'm just going to show you this, and if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out through the Q&A box or reach out afterwards. If we then see what else we have from a machine learning capability, we also need to make sure that it doesn't just stop when you've developed your solution. So once you start building your digital mailroom, you will have an administrator or a power user using training sets to develop a solution. And let's say a document comes in and the system thinks, well, I think we need to find this data point right there, but I'm not quite certain yet. So what it then does, it routes that document through to an operator, and that operator can then indeed say, well, you're right, it was indeed that value, so press a button, and the system will then learn from that. So the next time it'll be a bit more confident about that. But that operator can also say, well, you're right that you were not certain, because it's actually that piece of data that you need to have. And again, the system will learn from that going forward. So even though you start maybe at 80% of your project at the start, that will improve over time. This is going to drive ROI very quickly. So in conclusion, I've talked about how you can leverage AI to improve your digital mailroom. But the other thing I wanted to really talk about is how we can make the digital mailroom your communication hub within your organization. And the reason for that is, of course, because that's what I, as a customer, as a consumer, what I expect. If I submit all of the documentation you need for my new mortgage, I expect to be informed straight away that I've missed my income statement, and I don't want to wait 5 days until a business analyst has been able to review my application and says, oh, by the way, we missed this. No, I want to be informed straight away. You will need to have a digital mailroom that goes beyond just simple ingestion, but by leveraging AI, NLP, and machine learning will drive more value for your operations users, for customer service, for all of your business lines that depend on digital mailroom capabilities to drive their day-to-day work, actually. So we are going to be enriching these documents with information from systems within your organization, external systems, where we are leveraging RPA, cognitive capture, process orchestration, analytics, e-signing, communication generation, you name it. This is going to be your communication hub, and this will help you drive further value from your investment here, and is going to make sure that you hit ROI extremely fast. This is it, what I have in store for you. As said, I'm looking forward to all your questions that you've hopefully been able to fill out in the Q&A hub. So I'm going to switch to the Q&A part right now. So talk to you in a bit. Be right back.